Wendy. I don't know what's going on with you, but Dipper's never set foot in Gravity Falls in his life. Wendy went completely numb. What do you mean he's never stepped foot in Gravity Falls? He's visited here with you almost every summer since you guys were 12. No. I've visited Gravity Falls every summer since I was 12. I kept trying to convince Dipper to come up here with me, but he simply refused to tear himself away from his stupid books and video games. Even after I told him about all the cool and weird stuff you can find in the falls that he's usually all into, and he still refused to come. I don't think he ever believed me, to be honest. Don't you remember all the stories I used to tell you guys about my sad sap shut-in brother? This was bad. Wendy knew whatever deal Dipper had made with Cooper would be, but she never imagined it would be something like this. Do you have Dipper's phone number? I really need to talk to him. Well, sure, but why? You're never shown much interest in talking to him before. Just please give me the number, Mabel. Something freaky is going on here, and I think he's the only one who can answer my questions. Okay. But I want some details later. You sound awful familiar with my brother for somebody who's never even met him. Mabel relayed Dipper's cell number to her, but to Wendy's surprise, it turned out to be the same number he'd always had. Did that mean he straight up chose to just ignore her calls? Thanks, Mabes. I promise I'll explain later. Bye. Frustrated, scared, and a little angry, Wendy tried to contact Dipper again, and twice more she was directed to his voicemail. Undeterred, she tried again, but this time a very tentative but familiar voice finally answered. Hello? Dipper. Oh, thank God, you are okay. I was so afraid you'd. Wait, where are you? At my parents' house at the moment. Formerly in my bed until my phone started to ring incessantly. Who is this? Wendy flinched as if she'd been punched in the chest. You don't recognize my voice? Am I supposed to? He actually sounded more curious than he did sarcastic, like it was a real question. Come to think of it, your name on the caller ID did seem familiar. Wendy something. Wait, aren't you one of Mabel's friends from Gravity Falls? Is she okay? Yeah. Mabel's fine, Wendy sniffed, unwelcome tears leaking from her eyes. Oh good. You scared me there for a second. Dipper's concern furthered at how shaky this girl's voice sounded. If he didn't know any better, he might think she was crying. Are you okay? No. No, I'm not. But I guess that's not any concern of yours, is it? Wendy sobbed weakly as she disconnected the call. She didn't care if it was rude, or that it wasn't even Dipper's fault. She was too shocked and hurt to care. How could Dipper? For her, of all people. Wendy composed herself, and with newfound determination, marched back in the direction of the cave. As expected, Cooper was still floating right where she'd left him, back turned to her, his hands clasped behind him. He slowly turned to face his visitor, somehow managing to look coy despite his severe lack of facial features. Well, looky who's back. What a sir. Cooper paused as he casually floated out of the way of an axe that went whizzing by his eye. Prize. Well, hello to you too. You bastard. You took Gravity Falls from him. The place that meant the world to him. Where he finally made friends. Where he finally discovered himself and came out of his shell. All those years of memories, and you erased them all. Near hysterics, Wendy was half laughing, half sobbing uncontrollably. You took him. Damn it, you took him from me. Feel better now? Cooper asked dispassionately. I warned him the price was going to be steep and also needed to be uniquely valuable to him as your bargain was unique to you. I'm sorry, Missy, but asking me to push myself to the limits of my abilities is costly. Cooper's brow furrowed as his voice became uncharacteristically annoyed. What part of resurrecting someone from the dead and planting them back in the past is really, really hard? Don't the two of you dingalings seem to not understand? I don't care how fucking difficult it is on you, it's not fair. You just get your kicks out of seein' people suffer, you sick evil freak. Gesh, there's that evil thing again. Is evil just a catch-all characterization you folks make to shout down anyone that does something you don't like? Care to explain to me how anything I've done is evil? I resurrected your mother. I honored your boyfriend's request to help you weasel out of your contract. What's so evil about giving somebody what they want if they're willing to pay the price? Because the price you have to pay is absurd and feels purposefully intended to make the person you're dealing with suffer. For what I can only assume is your own amusement. Well, you're half right. I do find testing those that summon me wildly entertaining, but there is a method to my madness. You, poor choice of words, but whatever. It's not like I twisted your arms or forced either one of you kids to bargain with me. I cured you of your illness, and Dipper's now back home in Piedmont, none the wiser any of this has ever even happened. Now, who's exactly suffering because of that? I am. Because I have to remember. I still remember everything from the day we meet to the moment we went to bed earlier tonight, never expecting any of this would happen. I have to live with the burden of remembering a past that you erased. Really? Cooper seemed legit surprised by this. Interesting. And here I thought you'd appreciate that I let you keep your memory. Oh well, I had personal reasons for keeping your memories intact anyhow. As for erasing you and your boyfriend's pasts, again you're only half right. What is that supposed to mean? I'm not exactly in the right frame of mind for riddles right now. Clearly, but try to humor me for a moment. You claim I erased your past, but if you think really hard about it, you'd realize that your logic doesn't make much sense. Wendy did make a token effort to grasp what he was getting at, but her mind was too clouded to make any attempt feasible. I'm this close to a breakdown, and you want to get all cryptic with me. If there's something you want me to understand, then why don't we save some time, and you just explain it to me instead of playing these silly games? Fine, fine, fine. You humans really aren't much fun when you get all emotional, are you? Cooper began floating about casually as he tried to sum things up for Wendy as neatly as he could. Remember how I told you that resurrecting your mother basically taxed me to the limit of my powers? If displacing one person back in time was that difficult for me, why the golly gee willikers would you think I was capable of erasing nearly a decade's worth of time out of existence? Shouldn't my cousin have completely taken over this world by now without your friend around to set things in motion and help put a stop to Bill when the time came? I mean, come on. How are you even here having this conversation with me right now if I erased the past, so the kid never actually came to Gravity Falls? I do know you never would have bothered to try and find me if you weren't looking to impress Mr. Pines. Wendy blushed faintly, but she was too busy processing the information Cooper had just fed to her to feel too embarrassed. It didn't make complete sense to her, but if she was interpreting what she was hearing correctly. But if you didn't change the past then? Meddling with the flow of time is extremely difficult. Impossible in a lot of cases. You know what's easy though? Tampering with the human mind. Especially with human memories. They're so easy to block, manipulate, or remove entirely it's almost sad. So when Dipper agreed to give up Gravity Falls to cure you, fulfilling my end of the bargain was actually pretty easy. A lot easier than pulling off that whopper you dropped on me. Though I guess I kinda did bring that upon myself for offering to resurrect her, didn't I? Oh well. I simply used Dipper's memories to access the minds of everyone that the kid had any extensive contact with and removed any memory of him from their minds. I'm sure there were a few strangers who were aware of Dipper that probably maintained some memories that he once visited Gravity Falls, but those recollections wouldn't be near strong enough to make anyone who really knew him suspicious. The hardest part of the deal was transporting the kid back to his hometown. After rewiring his brain, that is. So yeah, that's the gist of it. I didn't erase the past. Just the kid's and the town's memories that he was ever here. Why leave my memories intact though? You realize that I can upend your entire little plot here if I can find a way to break through and convince everybody Dipper has been part of this town for years. Cooper was floating on his back at this point, hands resting behind his head as if he were relaxing atop of a hammock. He opened his eye halfway and responded coyly. Have you considered that maybe that's the exact reason I left your memories intact? What fun is a deal without a wild card or two tossed in to spice things up? Wah. You want me to try and undo the deal you made with Dipper? I'm more curious to see if you can. Cooper seemed excited as he produced a golf ball-sized object with matching shape and showed it to Wendy. It glowed brightly and appeared to have a mashup on undecipherable images swirling inside. This little beauty right here contains a portion of the town's forgotten memories of Dipper Pines. 20% of them to be precise, so there's 5 of these babies in total, and if you gather them all together, then boom. The town's forgotten memories of your adorable little boyfriend will unlock. I can't shake the feeling that you're still screwing with me, but... Seeing no other option, she glared at Cooper with determination. Where do I find the other 4? That, my dear, is where the fun really begins. Cooper snapped his fingers, and 4 doors magically appeared at the back of the cave, each with a corresponding number. I took the liberty of scattering Dipper's fragmented memories across several different realities. Well, 4 to be exact, obviously. All you have to do is pay a little visit to each reality and find the memory fragment, while likely having to dance around alternate versions of yourself and Mr. Dipper in the process. This entire concept should have come across as completely bizarre to Wendy. She was from Gravity Falls, though, damn it. For this town's denizens, this was simply Tuesday. Aren't people in these other realities going to get suspicious once a second Wendy strolls into town? They would indeed. Which is why you'll be temporarily hijacking the body of one of the locals while you commence your search. Oh, and you only have 3 hours in each location to locate the fragment. I doubt you'll need that long, though, to find a bright glowing ball that only you can see, especially since I hid every last one within a mile of the entrance of each reality. Not that I'm complaining over a chance to potentially fix this mess, but... Why are you telling me all of this? Couldn't you undo the deal yourself if you really wanted to, instead of sending me on a glorified fetch quest? Can't, it's against the rules. Plus, I wouldn't get anything beneficial out of the deal if I just reneged on it. I got to see how far Dipper was willing to go for you. Now the question I want answered is... Cooper's eye closed slightly. How far are you willing to go for him? Wendy's response was to walk right by Cooper, and straight towards the door marked number 1. What was essentially a portal to another reality. To hell and back if I have to. And if I'm blindly trusting you to steer me in the right direction, I'm pretty sure hell is exactly where I'm headed. Wendy had faced many daunting challenges in her life, so a damn door wasn't going to intimidate her. Even if it was the prospects of what loomed on the other side that posed the real threat. Without offering Cooper a courtesy glance, she opened door 1 and walked straight into worlds unknown. When Wendy entered the door, she walked straight into a solid white void. What happened next was hard to describe. It didn't hurt exactly. In fact, she described the feeling as more of a tingling sensation, but still. The idea that you were basically losing your physical form as your very essence appeared to leave your body was potentially psychologically scaring in itself. Wendy felt as if she'd lost complete control of herself as her essence appeared to speed through the expanse of the void, racing towards some unseen destination. Once she finally escaped that void, she landed in pretty much the last place she expected to end up. In the cafeteria of her old high school. She looked around in mild confusion, ears ringing from the noisy chatter of students on their lunch break. So hell it is then. What was that? A familiar voice seated next to her asked. Wendy turned her head to see what appeared to be a 16-year-old version of Mabel seated next to her, talking to her through bites of her sandwich. Oh, nothing, just talking to myself. You were kind of staring off into space for a minute there too. You sure you're feeling okay? Pause. Pause. Wendy looked down at her arms and legs, and saw a lot of purple. Oh, you have got to be shitting me. I'm the frickin' princess. Mabel continued to watch her friend in concern before deciding a change of subject might cure the awkwardness. So Pacifica. You looking forward to the dance this weekend? Wendy thought fast and quick how she thought Pacifica might answer that question in her home dimension. Of course, like, why wouldn't I be? Mabel chuckled, before a coy smirk crossed her lips. So be honest with me. Pause. Were you seriously unable to find a date for yourself, or did you just say that to try and guilt my brother into asking you? Dipper asked Pacifica to some kind of dance. Why Wendy felt so annoyed by that, she didn't quite understand. This wasn't her Dipper after all. Now come on, why would I do something like that? Mabel's brow furrowed in concern yet again. Pacifica, are you sure you're okay? Why are you talking so funny? How am I, talking funny? That's when it hit Wendy exactly what she was doing wrong. Wendy, you idiot. If you're in Pacifica's body, then she's already going to sound like herself when I try to talk. No wonder Mabel thinks you sound funny, you basically sound like Pacifica trying to do a bad impression of herself. And I should probably cut down on saying like. Pacifica doesn't say it all that much. Nah, I'm fine. Just nervous, I guess. It was really nice of Dipper to offer to take me to the dance in my hour of need. Mabel seemed satisfied with this response, so Wendy figured she must have done a better job at coming across as the blonde heiress. It was, but don't forget you two are only going as friends, so no funny business. He's already got a girlfriend he's absolutely crazy about. Yes, I get it. I had no plans on trying anything. Gesh. That's good to hear. Mabel said before scarfing down a big bite of her sandwich. Because if you did try something, Wendy is likely to kill you both. Wendy, in Pacifica's body, blushed and stared at Mabel as if she'd just made the most outlandish claim in the history of man. If Mabel noticed, she wasn't showing it. I'm Dipper's girlfriend? Wait, so this version of me goes to school with the twins? That's kind of cool. I always wondered what it would be like if they attended high school with me and the gang. But Mabel looks the same as she did when she was 16 in my world, so. Does that mean we're all the same age in this world? Hey, what do you know, here comes the lovebirds now. Wendy freed herself from her musings to look in the direction Mabel had motioned towards, and sure enough, there was this world's version of herself. Followed closely by a slightly taller Dipper, as they did appear to be the same age in this reality. Only they didn't appear to be anything close to a happy couple at the moment. In fact, it appeared as if they were fighting. I don't understand why you're so mad at me. Dipper shouted. You didn't even want to go to the dance. I still don't. They're stupid and lame. That doesn't mean you needed to go ask the princess instead. That was partly your idea. I'm just doing a favor for a friend, and you were perfectly fine with the arrangement yesterday. Well, maybe that was because I assumed you'd have the sense not to actually go through with it. Uh-oh. Mabel shifted uncomfortably as the traveling argument made a stop right in front of them. Poor Wendy, our Wendy, wasn't sure what to think. Here she was, watching a younger version of herself arguing with a teenage Dipper that she happened to be dating. All because he had agreed to take the Pacifica of this reality to a dance, whose body she happened to be currently hijacking. Should she be angry or offended? Just thinking about it was making her head hurt. Would you please just explain to me what changed between last night and this morning, so maybe I can figure out exactly what you think I did wrong? I'm not even gonna bother. Why don't you talk to your date? Maybe she'll have some answers for ya. Dipper sputtered something unintelligible but decided not to chase after his girlfriend as she stormed away from the table. He sighed instead, sat down across from his sister and allowed his head to slam against the table. Damn bro. You really screwed up this time, didn't you? Dipper lifted his head to give his sister an annoyed glare. Oh no, don't you turn this around on me too. It was you and Wendy that talked me into asking Pacifica to the dance in the first place. No offense intended, Pacifica. None taken. Relax, Dipper, I was just messing with you. Thanks, sis, I've always appreciated your ability to see the entertainment value in my misfortune. I just wish I knew why she's so mad at me all of the sudden. You guys were there. She was helping you critique Pacifica's dress for corn's sake. I dunno, bro. Maybe Wendy was fine with the idea last night, but changed her mind after she had time to think about it. I know I'd find it kind of weird to think of my boyfriend taking another girl out on a date, even if it was completely platonic. I guess. You know. Wendy, posing as Pacifica, spoke up. We can always call the date off if you have to, Dipper. I never meant to cause problems between you and Wendy. No, I'm not going to back out now. That wouldn't be fair to you, Pacifica. I know how much you were looking forward to the dance, even if I'm not. Wendy's just going to have to get over it. If she didn't want me to take you, she should have told me she was uncomfortable with it when we talked about it last night. Wendy found herself conflicted yet again. On one hand, she kind of wanted to smack Dipper for talking about herself like it, even if it was an alternate version of herself. On the other, the fact that he was kind and generous enough to do a favor for a friend that just happened to be highly inconvenient for himself reminded her of one of the many reasons she gradually fell for him over the years. Her head was starting to hurt again. Well, I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of lunch period without having to stare at my sad sack mug. I'll see you in class. Bye, Broseph. Hang in there. Wendy won't stay mad forever. That was extremely uncomfortable, Wendy mumbled to herself. I know, right? Mabel agreed, having no idea her friend's discomfort had nothing to do with what she probably thought it did. I've seen them argue once or twice, but this is the first time I've ever seen them actually fight. They're usually so lovey-dovey that it even makes me want to throw up in my mouth once in a while. Wendy widened Pacifica's eyes as she looked over at Mabel, a slight blush on her face. Thankfully, she managed not to say anything that might expose her. The Wendy from this world and Dipper were overly affectionate. It's not like she'd ever been shy about showing a little PDA when she was in the mood, but she never felt like she was overdoing it. Of course, none of her relationships back then ever lasted very long, but still. It was also a shock to her system to watch herself act so visibly and obviously jealous. Wendy didn't do jealous. If a guy was more interested in another girl, then she was done with him. Or maybe she just hadn't met anyone worth feeling jealous over. There was also the possibility she was overthinking everything. Just because this Wendy was an alternate version of herself didn't mean they were the exact same person. The ringing of the bell pulled Wendy out of her existential crisis. Mabel quickly wolfed down what remained of her lunch. The tray Wendy was just now realizing had been sitting in front of her this entire time had gone completely untouched. We better get our butts to class quick. We're already on thin ice for being late too often. Okay. Wait, class. It was official. Wendy had indeed been sent to hell for her many sins and misdeeds. She couldn't think of any other reason why she'd be sitting in the exact same English class suffering through a vaguely familiar lecture she'd already lived through once if this wasn't hell. It was even the same crusty-ass teacher she didn't like from back in her own high school days, and she was attending said class wearing the skin of, let's just say, someone who wasn't her favorite person in the world. To make matters worse, she was on a tight deadline. She had 3 hours to find Dipper's memory fragment, so she didn't have time to waste playing schoolgirl. At least this was the final period for today, so she should still have plenty of time to search the school for the fragment. She doubted the door would have brought her to the school if it wasn't hidden somewhere on the grounds. Wendy couldn't have cared less about the lesson, so she paid most of her attention to the downtrodden-looking boy seated 2 rows across and 3 seats up from her desk next to Mabel's. Dipper alternated from paying half attention to the lecture and laying his head on his desk looking absolutely miserable. The teen clearly had things on his mind other than school. A few excruciatingly boring minutes later, the final bell for the day rang, signaling the end to this portion of Wendy's current nightmare. She walked out of class following closely behind the Pines twins, deciding to stick by them in her Pacifica disguise a bit longer. She had a theory that if she wanted to find those memory fragments, the alternate versions of herself and Dipper would likely be the key to finding them. It sounded exactly like something somebody like Cooper would enjoy. So, are you going to try talking to Wendy again, or? I don't know, Mabel. She hasn't exactly seemed too eager to listen and... Dipper's words paused in his throat when his eyes landed upon his girlfriend, leaning up against some lockers while chatting with some guy none of them knew in what could only be described as an overly friendly manner. The twins recognized that look on her face immediately. Hell, Wendy recognized it too. It was the same expression she often wore when she was trying to flirt with someone or get their attention. When, through Pacifica's eyes, Wendy saw the crestfallen look on Dipper's face, she really wanted to storm over to this world's version of herself and slam her head up against one of those lockers. She wouldn't have to though, as Dipper acted immediately, power walking straight over to them. His version of Wendy tried her best to look indifferent as Dipper stopped right in front of her and looked her in the eye. What? Is there a problem, Dipper? What are you doing? Having a conversation, duh. Why, do you have a problem with that? The poor boy standing next to her looked back and forth between Wendy and Dipper, looking completely confused. Dipper didn't answer right away. He had to power up for what he was about to say. I thought we were better than this, Wendy. If you want to play games, go right ahead, but I have no interest in participating. When you decide you want to talk like adults, then come find me. If you can't do that, then I'm sorry. I'm done. What? Dipper, wait a second. Much like Dipper had at lunchtime, Wendy failed to chase after him as Dipper disappeared into the crowd of students. Her body started to tremble, as her hands clenched in anger. The boy she'd been conversing with foolish picked that moment to speak. About our project. What about it? Wendy shouted back at him, nearly making the teen jump out of his skin. Never mind. We'll talk about it more in class tomorrow. Later, Wendy. The boy left Wendy by herself, though not for long. She noticed with some annoyance that Mabel and Pacifica were walking up behind her. She knew what was coming and she wasn't in the mood. She managed to keep her tone even, but she still sounded annoyed nonetheless. What do you guys want? What the frig, Wendy? Mabel answered abruptly. You were totally flirting with that guy and made sure you were doing it where you knew Dipper would see you. It's not my fault if he got all bent out of shape about it. Her reactions didn't match up with her indifferent attitude. She couldn't look Mabel in the face, and she didn't exactly look proud of herself. I thought Dipper was overacting, but to see you sink that low so fast. Are you really that petty and jealous? I'm not petty, and I'm not jealous. I wasn't even really flirting with the guy. I just wanted to make Dipper think I was. He's my partner for a project we have to do in biology. But why? Mabel looked completely confused. And how exactly is pretending to flirt with another guy just to hurt Dipper not extremely petty, or any better for that matter? Why are you acting like this? I don't know, all right. Wendy growled in frustration. She tried to get her emotions and scattered thoughts together to form some sort of coherent picture and hoped it was clear enough that she could actually explain it. Did you know that 5 different guys have asked me to that stupid dance, and not one of them was my own boyfriend? This was doing nothing to alleviate Mabel's confusion. But I thought you didn't want to go to the dance. I don't. That doesn't mean it wouldn't have been nice if he tried to ask me. Then I could have told him that's sweet, but no. Let's go do something we might actually enjoy instead. He certainly didn't hesitate to jump at the chance to ask her. The Wendy in Pacifica's clothing blinked, unsure how to respond to her doppelganger pointing a figurative finger in her direction. Fortunately for her, Mabel did. Why would you be upset over that? You encouraged him to do it as a favor to her. It's still not too late to call the whole thing off, Wendy. Wendy said through Pacifica's voice. I wouldn't have agreed to go with him if I knew it was going to cause problems between you two. No. That's not. Wendy sighed, and face-bombed. That's not what I want. It was partially my idea for him to take you, and I'd be a real ass if I reneged on that now. Care to elaborate why you're so upset then, Wen? You seemed fine with everything last night. I was fine with it last night, Mabel. Then I had time to sleep on it. Then I kept thinking about how my boyfriend was essentially going on a date with one of the richest, most popular girls in town. Hell, it wouldn't have mattered if it were Pacifica or not. I would have hated the thought of Dipper dancing with any other girl. He should only be doing those kinds of things with me. Wendy shivered before finally confessing, "Alright, I'm freaking jealous, alright. I've never acted this way over a guy before, and I hate it. I've never been in a relationship for this long before either, especially with someone as important to me as Dipper, and I'm terrified I'm going to do something to mess it up." So, your answer to avoiding all that was to get angry, act like a jealous butthead, and treat your boyfriend like crap for basically no reason? Yeah. Maybe you should avoid giving out any relationship advice for the foreseeable future. Never claim to be an expert, Mabes. I do stand by my right to be angry though. I have the right to feel how I feel, but I need to find out a way to blow off some steam. I'll talk to you guys later. As Wendy ventured off, Mabel turned to the girl she knew as Pacifica and said, "That seemed to go pretty well given the circumstances. Don't you think so, Paz?" Unsure of how to respond, Wendy sputtered out a simple, "I guess." "Well, I should be running off myself. I promised Glenn I'd meet up with him after school let out." "Glenn?" Wendy asked, not recognizing his name, and hoping it wasn't somebody this Pacifica was supposed to know. "Yes. Glenn. My date for the dance, remember? I know you weren't impressed, but... Oh, whatever. I'll call you later if I find out anything more on the Wendy and Dipper front, okay?" Wendy had mixed feelings over getting left to her own devices. It was kind of comforting having familiar faces around to help absorb the shock of finding yourself in an alternate dimension similar, yet so different, from your own. On the other hand, she finally had time to search the school from that memory fragment without drawing suspicion. Theoretically. She just wasn't sure where or how to look, and she was starting to curse the fact that she'd been too stubborn to pry more useful information from the floating scroll. While she had yet to find that glowing orb, she did find a Mr. Dipper Pines angrily rifling through his locker. Even if this wasn't her Dipper. Even if she were wearing the skin of another human being he also considered a friend, she couldn't resist the urge to make her way over to him. "Would it make you feel better if I gave your locker a good punch in the throat?" It wasn't a very princess-like thing to say, but Wendy didn't care. She felt like saying it anyway. "Oh. Hey, Pacifica. No, I'm still worked up, I guess. We get in one fight, and her first instinct is to start flirting with other guys to get back at me? I just don't know. If it makes you feel any better. Mabel and I don't think she was actually flirting with that guy. We think she just wanted to make you think she was, so you'd get jealous or something, I guess." "What makes you think that?" Dipper asked, sounding a touch hopeful. "Because we know Wendy, and we know she really cares about you. Too much to want to hurt you over something so petty. That, and she told us that's exactly what she was doing when we asked her about it. That still doesn't excuse the way she's acting. I haven't done anything to deserve it." Mason," she started, recalling how Mabel mentioned that this version of Pacifica liked to call Dipper by his given name. "Let me ask you a question. Did you even consider asking Wendy to that dance?" "No. I had zero interest in going to that dance, and Wendy had less than me. So no, the thought never really crossed my mind until Wendy and Mabel talked me into asking you when you complained that you were having trouble finding a date. Well, Gesh, you sure know how to make a girl feel special, Mason." The only way for Pacifica Northwest to find a date was to have her friends coerce the school dork into asking her out of desperation. "You know that's not what I mean, Paz. Come on, I agreed to attend this dance with you knowing I'm going to hate the experience, and I'm only doing it because you really wanted to go, and I didn't want you to miss out. Well, wasn't this Dipper a little sweetie? Too bad it was for the wrong girl, in the redhead's point of view. Oh, lighten up. I'm just messing with you, dude." Dipper's brow raised, as he slightly cocked his head to the side. The scrutiny was making Wendy quite nervous. "Did you just call me dude?" Wendy blushed in embarrassment, wishing she could stuff Pacifica's body into one of those lockers and hide. "What? Like, no way. Like, you must have been hearing things you know. Wendy's cheeks flushed again, this time from realizing she was overcompensating for her mix-up badly by doing her Pacifica performing a bad impersonation of Pacifica voice again. Anyway, Mabel and I think that maybe Wendy's upset because she's jealous that you asked me to the dance instead of asking her first. But I knew she didn't want to go. Why would she suddenly get angry that I didn't ask her to an event she had no interest in attending, especially after pushing me to ask you? It doesn't make any sense. If girls made sense all the time, dating and relationships would be easy. A weirdly relaxed smile crept across Pacifica's face, one that would have seemed more appropriate on Wendy's. It just doesn't work that way though. We're a lot more complicated than that. Sometimes we don't even know what we want until it smacks us across the face. The irony that she was looking directly at Dipper as she said that wasn't lost on Wendy in the least. That's the thing though. Other than that awkward period after I first moved to Gravity Falls, and we were both trying hard not to ruin our friendship by having feelings for each other, things haven't been complicated. I mean, nothing is ever perfect, but for the most part things with her have felt so natural and easy. I guess we've benefited from being such close friends for so long. You're more open with your friends than someone you're romantically interested in, so we were already aware of each other's quirks and what made the other person tick. It was like buying the puzzle with the pieces already put together. We got to skip that awkward phase where you're trying to get to know each other. This is the first time in nearly a year together that I have absolutely no idea where she's coming from. Wendy felt Pacifica's heart flutter in her chest. Sure, Dipper wasn't exactly quoting Casanova or anything, but hearing someone you care about tell you it felt natural to be with you still made a girl feel good. Even if it wasn't necessarily her he was talking about. It probably won't be the last time either. No matter how close you are to someone, there's still some things you keep to yourself. Sometimes because you don't understand what you're thinking or feeling yourself, let alone how to explain to somebody else. If I were you, I'd be glad your first major misstep is something so trivial and easy to fix. Dipper smirked a little bit at that. I guess you have a point there. It does make sense. How could I possibly understand what Wendy's feeling right now if she doesn't even understand it herself? Bingo. Thanks. Pause. You know. Before Dipper could finish his thought, they were interrupted by a familiar voice shouting obscenities up and down the halls of the school. Well, Mabel grade obscenities anyhow. Stupid, toad-licking no-good butt-faced jerk. Mabel? Dipper spoke her name in concern as his sister stormed towards them, noticing she was a bit misty-eyed as she got closer. Mabel didn't even seem to notice he and Pacifica were there until she was right up next to them. What's wrong? That jerk Glenn is what's wrong. He kicked me to the curb, so he could go to the dance with Chole Harper. What an ass. I'm sorry, sis. Dipper forced a faint smirk. You want me to get Wendy to beat him up for you? Maybe. That doesn't solve my main problem though. There's no way I'm going to find another date in less than a week without scraping the bottom of the barrel. Dipper didn't even have to force the frown. Mabel. You are aware that if it weren't for Wendy, I'd be considered bottom of the barrel. You know what I mean, Dip. Anybody that doesn't have a date yet, then there's probably a good reason for it. Freaking Chole was supposed to be on vacation this weekend. I have an idea. Pacifica spoke up, though Wendy inside of her hoping she wasn't overstepping her bounds suggesting this. Since Wendy obviously isn't crazy about the idea of Dipper taking me, and now that your date has flaked out on you, why don't we just go together? Me. And you? Mabel sputtered, the normally boy-crazy girl appearing to mull the idea over. Why not? If all the guys in this school are too lame to ask two smoking hot girls like us out to some lame old dance, then who needs them? Yes. 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 I love it. Screw stupid boys. Mabel pumped her arms in the air, only to lower them and ask cautiously. But if a cute guy asks one of us to dance we can say yes, right? Of course. Sweet. I'm in. Dipper couldn't help but smile at the display. He wouldn't voice it aloud, but as a brother, He was kind of glad Mabel wouldn't have a date he'd have to worry might try to get weird with her later. As his sister continued to Mabel on about this turn in events, he noticed Pacifica look over and give him a wink. Looks like you're off the hook, Mason. I think now might be a good time to go make up with your girlfriend. Go get her, Tiger. Right. Right. Dipper's eyes widened. The primary reason Wendy was upset with him had basically just self-corrected itself. As long as Wendy was willing to talk to him, then maybe. Dipper whipped out his phone and tried to call Wendy, groaning in frustration when she didn't answer. He tried texting her next, and to his surprise he got a rather quick response. Luckily, Wendy hadn't gotten very far. He found her exactly where she said she would be, seated on a bench just outside one of the side entrances of the school. Thankfully, most of the foot traffic had already cleared out, so at least they wouldn't be too crowded. He cautiously strolled up to the bench and stood beside where she was seated. So, what are you up to? Just sitting here. She replied somewhat combatively, then paused as she seemed to reconsider how she was approaching things. She sighed and answered truthfully. Waitin' here hopin' you would show up eventually. Well, here I am. Mind if I sit down? Please do. Dipper sat down next to her, making sure not to sit too close. They both sat there in nervous silence for a full minute before blurting out a simultaneous, "I'm sorry." They stared at each other briefly. Dipper managed a small smile, but Wendy looked slightly more annoyed as she stared at the pavement beneath their feet. Don't you go apologizing to me, okay? I helped talk you into a skin, Pacifica, to that stupid dance, and I should have been honest with you when I realized it bothered me more than I thought it was going to. I still upset you, and I can feel bad about that if I want. He chuckled, just out of curiosity though, why did you get so upset over it? Dare I say jealous even? You know Pacifica and I are just friends. Dipper. Wendy managed to pull her eyes away from the pavement and finally face her boyfriend. Think about what you just said for a moment and try to understand why I might be a little bit worried. Dipper did as she requested, but he still couldn't find anything close to a secret clue that might hint to him what Wendy's issue was. I'm sorry, Wendy, but I still don't get it. Damn it, Dipper. Have you forgotten already? Around this same time last year, we were just friends, and a long time before that, so we know better than anyone how quickly that can change. Can you understand now why I might be a tad bit concerned? You see Pacifica as just a friend now, but she's rich and pretty. What if? Wendy, that's a totally different situation. After his girlfriend gave him a disbelieving glare, Dipper elaborated. I had a massive crush on you for years before we ever got together, Wendy. I've never seen Pacifica as anything more than a good friend. That's why it's different. It's always been you for me, Wendy. There's never been anybody else. Wendy blushed heavily from the pure honesty in Dipper's assertion, but she still looked uncertain of herself. It's not just the Pacifica thing, Dip. That was part of it, but it could have been any other girl and I probably would have felt the same way. I'm not used to feelings like this, dude. Feelin' jealous and insecure about myself. I don't like how it feels, or how it makes me act when those feelings take me over. Like how I treated you all day today. So. Dipper stammered, feeling extremely anxious over where this conversation seemed to be headed. Are you saying that? Dude, stop. Wendy commanded, as she grabbed Dipper by the hand. I know that look, so don't start doubting yourself now. The good feelings you give me far outweigh anything bad, trust me. Far too much good to just throw away what we have together. It's just stuff I need to learn to sort through without acting all self-destructive. You know I've had quite a few. Well, not necessarily boyfriends, but guys I dated before you. Oh yes, I'm familiar with the legends. Dozens if I remember correctly. Dipper's poorly timed joke earned him a well-deserved elbow in the ribs. Oh. Not the time, man. Yes, there was a few before you, but none of those relationships, you can't even really call most of them that, barely lasted a month. I was either in and out before I could get bored, or the guy tended to show what a pig he was before we got too far. You're the first real relationship I've had that's lasted any longer than a cup of coffee, and more importantly, you're the only one who's mattered. I guess I try too hard not to screw things up sometimes that I actually end up doing the opposite. Wendy. You know it's going to take a hell of a lot to drive me away, right? Getting angry over something trivial, or revenge flirting with another guy isn't going to get the job done. You know I wasn't actually flirting with Todd, right? I just wanted you to think I was. Which doesn't really sound any better when I try to explain it, does it? I still tried to hurt you either way, and all because some warped part of me wanted you to feel like I was feeling at that moment. Jealous, you mean? Wendy, I hate to break it to you, but you've got a long way to go to catch up to me in the jealousy department. I'm the one dating one of the most popular girls in school. If we break up, you're going to have a line of potential suitors to pick from. Yeah, just keep being the confident and cool one, and I'll keep insecure and anxious nailed down, alright? No deal. Somebody will come along with eyes for you eventually. All I can promise is that I'll try not to take their heads off. Fair enough, Dipper submitted. He felt like he could breathe easy again now that they were getting everything out in the open. There was one giant elephant left in the room though. So, be honest with me. Were you upset or at least disappointed that I didn't at least try to ask you to that dance? Wendy had to think over how to answer him for a minute. If I have to choose one, I'd say disappointed more than upset. I mean, 5 different guys asked me to that stupid thing and none of them were you, so that was kinda weird. 5 other guys. Who exactly? Wendy tried, for all of a half second, and failed to stifle the laugh she knew was coming. 3 guys I'm pretty sure I've never met before, and 2 others I can't remember the names of. So nobody important, and certainly nobody you need to be worried about. I don't want anybody else, Dipper. Still doesn't change the fact that all those guys asked you, knowing you already have a boyfriend. Which just goes to show how people view our relationship, not that I care what they think, mind you. And you were jealous over me going on a date as a favor to a friend. 2 different things, dude. 5 nobodies I don't care about, and 1 rich pretty heiress that happens to be one of your best friends. I still say I'm the one with the more legitimate reason to be concerned. We're splitting hairs now, so why don't I just get to the point now that I'm not going to the dance with Pacifica, which also means you have nothing to be concerned about either. You're not going? Dude, I didn't want you to back out. I know my behavior didn't show it, but honestly that's not what I wanted. I'm not the one who backed out. Dipper said, causing Wendy to hush in surprise. Plans changed a few minutes ago after Mabel's date decided to dump her for another girl. That Glenn guy. Wendy spat with a noticeable hint of venom. That little creep. Does Mabel need me to show him the error of his ways? Maybe, Dipper laughed. But for right now she seems content, all things considered. Since Mabel didn't really have time to find a replacement date, her and Pacifica decided to go together. Oh. Wendy tried to keep her voice even. Which means you're off the hook for having to go then. Yep. I was going to use that as the icebreaker for this conversation, but it turns out I didn't even need it. Well, let's get this last bit of nonsense out of the way then, shall we? Wendy. Will you go to this stupid dance with me? Wendy's eyes widened slightly, before smiling brightly at the goofy dork sitting next to her. You know what? I think I will. Wendy gave Dipper a quick peck on the cheek. Dipper smiled in response, only to watch Wendy's face immediately fall in concern. We don't actually have to go though, right? Oh, hell no. Let's do anything else, please. As long as I'm with you, that's all I care about. You dork. Wendy grumbled, blushing furiously. Sometimes she hated how he could have that effect on her. She got over it immediately though, and pulled him in for a real kiss, not caring at all who or how many people saw them. If anyone said anything, she'd kick their asses later. Only one person was actually paying attention to the exchange. The girl this reality knew as Pacifica smiled appreciatively as a lone tear trickled down her eye. Dipper. I promise you, once I get home and fix your memory, we're finally going to have a chance at that kind of a relationship. No more excuses, no more running. Wendy's attention was pulled away from the smooching couple by a bright light that began to emanate from the empty hallway at her back. The source was one of the lockers amongst the rows of many. She warily approached the light, flinching in surprise as the locker door opened by itself. Inside was a glowing golf ball-sized orb. The memory fragment. It hadn't been there when she first walked through this area. She would have noticed a light that bright. Was it because her doppelganger and her version of Dipper reconciled? Was that the key to locating the fragments, not simply locating them, but by helping out the various versions of herself in each reality? She could worry about the answer later. She grabbed the fragment before anybody else could get the chance to wonder why she was shoulders deep in somebody else's locker. She admired the orb in her hand, and almost instantly, the blonde in the purple outfit was gone, and Wendy found herself back in her own body back at Cooper's shrine. Bravo, bravo. Cooper applauded as Wendy just glared at him cynically. I knew you could do it. Actually, I didn't, and now I'm out $20. Oh well, those are the breaks. A bat hanging above Cooper's head squeaked loudly. Hey, I'm good for it. What does a bat need money for anyway? Your species doesn't even understand the concept of currency. The bat squeaked again as it flapped its wings in an agitated fashion. Oh, why don't you go give somebody rabies, you winged rodent? I don't have time for this crap. Wendy grumbled. Hey, scroll guy. Answer me something. Am I supposed to be helping out the versions of myself in these alternate realities in order to find Dipper's memory fragments? That information really would have helped me out back there. I'm afraid I can't confirm or deny that theory, Red. It would spoil all the fun if you knew all the secrets to the game ahead of time. This isn't a game for me, you creep. You keep talking to the bat if you want. I still need to find my boyfriend's memory. Whoa, 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 whoa. Did you just say? Yeah, I know what I said. Deal with it. Wendy turned to stare down door number 2. There was no hesitation this time as turned the knob ready to discover what was waiting for her on the other side.